Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Nick and Joe Show. My name's Nick. He's Joseph. He's in Ottawa, and I'm not. I'm up here in Sioux Lookout in northwestern Ontario, and we're glad you joined us this evening. We've got quite a show lined up for you. Uh, I just tell you, we're finally getting into winter up here, Joseph. It's starting to snow. It's getting cold, and I don't mean Southern Ontario cold. I mean like the bone-chilling kind of cold. And we're supposed to get a couple of inches over the next couple of days, which isn't much. This time last year, we had over 2.5 feet. We had over 2.5 feet by then. So it's not the same winter so far. And that would suit me just fine because we ended up with over 5 feet of snow by the time the winter was over. So there you go. So if you're feeling sorry for yourself because it's wintertime wherever you are, you can always come up here and find out what winter's really like.
Yeah, 5 feet
Not
of
that
snow.
matters.
5 feet of snow over the course of an entire winter actually doesn't sound like much to me at all.
Well, it is because it doesn't go away. It just keeps piling up. That's almost as tall as that's a foot less than I am. And by the way, um, Francis Van Boxtel just reminded me we were supposed to play. Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble.
You
To
know, it's
start the
funny.
show
I
tonight.
downloaded that off of YouTube, so I have it in my audio library. But
Okay,
but I'm
that's.
not producing the show, so and you forgot to introduce John in the background there. There's
Hey.
John.
Oh, I did, John. My
Oh,
apologies,
this is
John.
where I get
Nick,
thrown under the bus here, is it?
no, this
Yeah,
is where
pretty.
we, John. This is where we get to pick on Nick and tell him to move into the middle so you're not cut off there.
Well, you see, in fairness, when it was just the two of you and I had you on this shot here, which means nothing for the radio audience, when I had you on the wider shot, he's perfectly centered. When I zoom in on you, the two of you, though, it throws him off center. So, and even worse when I come on the screen.
Okay,
That's quite all right.
we forgive you.
Thank you.
Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble.
When you're perfect,
You're
in
perfect
every way.
Yes,
I can't wait
indeed.
to look in the mirror because I
I
get better
get better
looking
looking
each
each day.
day.
To
How
know
many
me
guys?
is to love me. I must be a
Yeah,
hell of a man.
Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble.
See,
But I'm
why
doing the
why
best
would we
that I
play the
can.
actual song when we can give you this, F. Van
That's
Boxtel?
yes, yeah. I was just
That's
thinking
right,
that.
because I know all
Actually,
the
what I was
verses.
really thinking was, guys, I know how you guys like talking this way, but the truth is, I'm a little bit more circumspect. I understand that if you have to make the claim that you're perfect, you probably aren't. Which is why I never claim to be perfect.
Well, you see, the whole joke. I don't know. You already know this. The joke is a parody, but anyway, the song is a
Of
parody.
course,
But
of course, it's
it's
a
just a
parody.
cute little jingle.
Yes.
There you go. And
Anyway,
maybe we will.
And for those
Francisco says maybe we should play the first nature break.
first the
Yeah.
first and for those of you who are wondering what the heck we're talking about, you're going to have to go back and watch the show from last week.
yeah, thanks for
listen to the
That's
show
right.
from
tuning
last
into all the
week.
grandfathers kibitzing tonight. We appreciate you being
That's what this is. Yes, because you have to be that old to know what we're talking about.
That's it.
Oh man.
All right, I'm here if you need me,
Anyway,
guys. Have a good show.
All right.
all
Thanks,
right.
Joe. Thanks, John.
Now,
I just called him Joe. It just goes to show you. I
yeah,
haven't
you
even been
did. I
drinking yet.
know. This is one of the problems, that we have is um, when we start forgetting where we are and who we are and what we're supposed to talk about. That's a sign. I don't know what kind of sign it is, but there you go.
Well,
I do want to.
we don't have anything that we absolutely have to talk about. We are the hosts of the show, and we get to choose what we want to talk about.
That is true.
While
And
while you guys in the chat room get to ignore us and have your conversations about whatever else you want to
it's
talk
like
about, which is kind of
it's
normal,
almost
but
like a little subculture over there
yes,
in the chat room.
it's right there.
Sometimes they're hanging on every word we say, and
Well,
after we say hello, they go off and they do their own thing.
well, Nick, some famous people have groupies. We have roomies.
Roomies. I'm not. Yeah, I think probably our version is the better of the two.
Well,
They don't bring nearly as much trouble.
that's what I'm going with. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
me
going with.
too. Anyway, getting to the serious stuff.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
let me bring this story up and share a couple paragraphs. This is a really big deal up here because so many people depend on this. Let's see. This is from Post Millennial News. And the headline reads Trudeau bill amendment would result in largest gun ban in Canadian history. The majority of Canada's 2.2 million licensed firearms firearms owners will now be criminalized should the amendments to Bill C-21 become law. All right. So let me share just 2 or 3 paragraphs. A surprise last-minute amendment by the Liberals to the Trudeau's pending gun control bill, initially pitched as a way to prevent the sale of Canadian handguns, would result in the largest gun prohibition in Canadian legislative history, the National Post reports. The amendment tabled by Liberal MP Paul Chang would criminalize a firearm that is a rifle or shotgun that is capable of discharging centerfire ammunition in a semi-automatic manner and that is designed to accept a detachable cartridge magazine with a capacity of greater than 5 cartridges of the type for which the firearm was originally designed. In addition to this, is a 478-page amendment that bans a number of other guns by name, including the SKS, a Soviet-designed rifle with an estimated 20,000 owners that is frequently used in sports shooting. This flies in the face of what the Liberals said in 2019, that the government would not ban guns designed for hunting. Okay. Look, I don't care whether you like firearms or not. It really doesn't matter to me. And I'm speaking in general to the people listening and watching. But the fact that one of the things that keeps the government in its check is the fact that they should be afraid of the population. I'm not talking about armed revolt. Okay, I'm not talking about let's go grant the pitchforks and the lanterns and the shotguns and we'll go throw those bums out of Parliament. That's not what I'm talking about. But in a well-ordered society, first of all, you have the right to self-defense. And you know that old saying, never bring a knife to a gunfight? It applies here. So if you have a firearm in your home, okay, you have an ability to defend yourself against people who want to come into your home uninvited and do harm to you or your personal property. And that is as much true in Canada as it is in the United States. Now, the United States has a Second Amendment, but in the British North America Act, it also states that we have all the rights British citizens had when they wrote and signed the B&A. And one of the rights that the British people had was the right to self-defense. They were allowed to keep and bear arms for the same reasons the Americans did. So it's not true that we don't have the right to bear arms. It's in our B&A. You just have to know how to read it. Anyway, so what Trudeau is doing here, if this has got nothing to do with safety, and I guess this is really the heart of it. Never mind whether you like to go out and hunt for meat, which is a huge thing around here. A lot of people go out and they'll go after moose or deer or bear or ducks or what partridge or whatever it is, because they want to put some extra protein in the freezer, especially now that food is so expensive. So you don't want to curtail their ability to do that. And the people who tote the grandpa's 30-06 or your uncle's 16 or 12 gauge, they're not the ones that are causing all the problems with firearms anyway. That's in the cities with handguns, and nothing in all of this deals with that. So he's going after hunters, people with firearms who are already vetted by the RCMP, who are already law abiding, but he's not doing anything about the gang problems in the major cities. Now, Joseph, I'll let you in here in a second, but to me, it's just, okay, either he wants to disarm the Canadian population for reasons I don't even want to contemplate, or he just has no idea about how to get a handle on the problem in the cities with smuggled in handguns being used by gangs in drive-by shootings and all the kinds of horrible things we hear about on the nightly news. That's my cue for you.
Is that my cue? Sorry about that.
Yeah, when I stop talking, you can jump in.
Yeah. Well, okay. So a lot of different things here. The first thing is I think we have to just, again, make sure that we understand what we're talking about here. So this is not a government amendment. At least I don't know that it's a government amendment. It's an amendment that's been proposed by a backbench Liberal MP. And so the government may support it, it may not support it, but it's not readily apparent on the surface whether or not the government is going to support this particular amendment. And we have to remember that every member of parliament, whether they're a member of the governing party or not, if they're a backbencher, they have the right to propose amendments to any particular bill, including government bills. So I wouldn't push the panic button yet. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when we talk about, for instance, a 12 gauge or 60 gauge shotgun, I'm not 100% sure that this particular amendment, if it were to pass, would apply to it. Now, let me stress that I'm not saying that I support this amendment. Okay, I'm in favor of sensible gun regulation, just like I'm in favor of sensible car regulation. All right, so I'm not defending gun control, at least in the way that the liberal government, this current liberal government particularly, envisions it. I'm just saying that I don't think that we have to hit the panic button on this. And once the bill passes the House of Commons, assuming it passes, and if this amendment is in it, then we can also go at it from the Senate side of things. So it doesn't automatically become law. But I'll tell you what really jumps out at me actually when I read the particular news report that you were referring to,
Right.
Nick, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to read it one more time because I think it really is worth people just paying attention to this. Okay, so the amendment, okay, reads as follows: a firearm, it would criminalize a firearm that is, quote, a rifle or a shotgun that is capable of discharging center fire ammunition in a semi-automatic manner and that is designed to accept a detachable cartridge magazine with a capacity greater than 5 cartridges of the type for which the firearm was originally designed. Now that's a quote from the amendment. And what jumps out at me with this is, okay, like bureaucratic bafflegab. I mean, somebody had to sit down. I could just picture a committee of bureaucrats, none of whom actually have used a firearm at all. Okay, because look, I grew up with guns. I grew up with guns in my home. I grew up with guns in my family. I grew up with guns all over the community with friends and neighbors and stuff like that. I can tell you that none of us ever sat down and scratched our heads and said, gosh, if only I had a firearm that's capable of discharging a center fire piece of ammunition in a semi-automatic manner. Frankly, Nick, I know guns, okay? And I have no idea what they're talking about.
No, look, obviously you're right about the baffle
Okay,
gap.
so, I mean, really. So, okay, so it's hard for me to take it seriously, and I know it's a serious topic, okay? But, at some point in time, you have to see some of the humor and some of the stuff that goes on. But, Nick, I think you're making a really great point. Because in the final analysis, okay, this is supposed to be about safety and saving people's lives, okay?
That's right.
And the gun problem that we have in this country is the same kind of gun problem that Americans have to a much greater degree than we have. And to the extent that there are gun problems in any other country, it's the same thing. And that is illegal guns being used in the commission of crimes. Okay? So outlawing guns of any form doesn't prevent that kind of thing from happening. Because, newsflash, and I'm sorry to make it oversimplified maybe, I'm sorry to avoid the bureaucratic bafflegab, but the bottom line is this: bad guys do bad things.
Yeah.
Criminals break the law. So, okay, make handguns illegal. The killing, the shootings, and the gang violence in our large cities continues unabated. So what's the response of the federal government? Rather than going after the criminals, we just make handguns more illegal. And when that doesn't work, Well, let's go back to the drawing board and let's make handguns even more illegal. And while
You
we're
can
at it,
see
let's figure out how to get rid of these center firing blah 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 rifles. Okay, it's nonsense. Look, last point, at least in this part of my diatribe, and that is simply this. Okay, you want to stop gun violence in Toronto, in particular, where it's a real problem. I have a suggestion for you. If somebody uses a firearm in the commission of a crime, okay, automatic 10-year sentence, no possibility of parole. Bang. Take them
the
off
words right
the
out of my
street.
mouth.
Take
took
the
the word-
criminals off the street. Forget about the guns, because they're going to get guns because they're getting guns already. It doesn't matter how illegal
Look,
they are.
With modern 3D printing, you can print yourself a gun.
Yeah, you could
Now,
actually.
I don't know how many
hadn't thought
times
of
you
that.
can use it. What's that?
I hadn't thought of that, but it's true.
In other words, guns are going to be with us. Let's accept that fact. And that the vast majority of us, people like you and me, the people in the chat room, the people you pass on the street, would never dream of using a firearm to inflict unwarranted damage to another human being. They're not just going to pull a pistol and shoot somebody. That's just not going to happen unless the person they're shooting at is shooting at them. Okay, which almost never happens. And when it does happen, it's such a big deal. Like High River, Nova Scotia, you can count on one finger, on one hand, how many times somebody has actually done something like that. And of course, I'm not saying these issues are not tragic. The story, the most recent in Nova Scotia, okay, of course, that's tragic. Nobody wants to see that. But it's so unique in Canadian culture that people overreact. They go, oh my God, we got to ban all guns so this never happens again. No, what you have to do is make sure that when it does happen, people have the ability to defend themselves. There's all kinds of statistics out of the States about people who stop crime by having a firearm with them or in their home. So, or even making sure people are properly vetted, making sure that there's, if you want to put them through a psychological test to make sure they're sane before you sell them a handgun, I have no problem with that. I'm saying that though, it's outside the norm for our society for these kinds of mass shootings to take place. And when they do take place, people don't know what to do and they do the wrong thing invariably. And this, I think, is an extension of that. Because the other alternative is that there is some wild conspiracy. The government does want to strip us of all our firearms, so we have no ability to resist.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to think like that.
Yeah.
But it's one or the other in my mind.
I don't buy that, Nick. I don't see a conspiracy here to disarm the population. I don't think that we should be able to bear arms because of our ability, or we should have the ability to revolt against a tyrannical government. And if, God forbid, we ever found ourselves in a situation where we did actually have a tyrannical government installed in Ottawa, or if we were in the United States in Washington, or any other capital city, okay? The fact is that if we're going to rebel against the central government, we're going to rebel against the central government, and it's not going to make one bit of difference whether or not firearms have been regulated or illegal or anything like that. So I just don't see this as a conspiracy. And
I'm not
really
saying it is.
No, I know you're not. I'm just reacting to the whole thing. And listen, Nick, you may not see it as a conspiracy, but we know people that do think it is.
That's right.
And I'm just saying, I just don't see it as a conspiracy. I'm not concerned about being able to defend myself. Okay. I get it. It's a legitimate concern that people have. I'm not criticizing them, but for me, this isn't a big deal. What I see this as just one more instance of people who get themselves elected, get themselves put into positions of authority over everybody else, basically lording it over people and coming up with more and more nonsensical, foolish, bureaucratic, idiotic, jargon-infested reasons to tell us what to do and what not to do. And it could be guns, it could be pesticides. Listen, I'm here in Ottawa. Nick, when you were living down here, you'll remember that it wasn't that long ago that the municipal government here in Ottawa had put in place a bylaw saying that if you have a tree that has the trunk has a diameter of whatever it was in your backyard of, I think it
I think
was,
it was
like
4 inches
3 inches
or
or something like that, whatever that is in centimeters. I don't know off the top of my head. Let's say 7.5 centimeters, that you had to have a permit to cut it down. Okay. And then there was an instance where somebody cut down a tree in their backyard and the government was fining them per day that the tree was no longer there. I mean, it's, to me, all of these things are just, they're unanswerable reasons why we need minimal government. Not as a political philosophy or anything like that. It's just that the bigger the government is, the more power that they have, the more idiotic that some of these guys act when they have that power, and the stupider the things they tell us that we have to do or not do in order to what? Okay, really, if I want to have shade in my backyard, I'll plant a tree. If I don't want to have shade in the backyard, or if that tree is interfering or whatever, like, I'm going to cut it down. It's my damn backyard. Okay.
It's also your
I see
tree.
the gun thing to be sort of in that category of just complete
So,
foolishness.
you know what this reminds me of? Just listening to what you were just saying, reminds me of there are 3 parts to a jump: takeoff, in flight, and landing.
Right. I remember.
Somebody had to write that. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, Joseph and I did a show a couple years ago about the new curriculum, and everybody was all worried about the sex ed part of it. And there was some legitimate reasons to be concerned about that. But we went and took a little bit different spin and looked at what the physical education side of it was. And teachers now had to teach, 4 and 5-year-olds how to jump. I told my wife there, and she looked at me like I was 3-headed. She said, "You
Right.
realize they're born knowing how, right?" I said, "I'm not the one who wrote it."
Yeah.
I mean,
they figured out how to break down the components of jumping or the components of
3
kicking a
parts.
ball.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, that's right. To impel.
Swing your leg back, swing it forward, make contact with the object.
It was just insane. But that was all bureaucrats
No.
who were doing that stuff.
Do you remember
with my government? Yeah, you're
do
right.
you remember this,
Francis.
Nick? Okay, and I'm allowed to say this because I'm a portly fellow. Okay, but you can't use the word portly. You can't use the term overweight. God forbid that you should ever use the term fat. No, the accepted language now in the Ontario curriculum is round.
I've forgotten that. That's right.
You've forgotten that, right?
Round.
I mean, really, okay. Look, I'm not saying you should be running around telling the kid he's fat, okay, anything like that. But we're paying bureaucrats hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to sit around in their groups and committees and come up with this stuff. So I go back to the language of this particular amendment, and I'm thinking to myself, how in heaven's name do you sit down and you actually figure out this? I look at this and my first impression is there actually a gun that fits this such a closely defined, minutely defined series of criteria here that it just fits into that category? Now, of course there is, but no gun owner is going to sit around and do this. Somebody had to actually think, we have to ban another gun, so let's figure out what kind of firearm it's going to be, and how do we write that into the legislation in such a way that I'm going, man, good grief. I mean, if this is the way government runs, and it is, then we're in bigger trouble than we think we are.
I was just sitting here thinking about what you were talking about when getting back to the guns thing. Most hunting rifles I know of, whether it's a 308, a 30-30, 303, 30-06, whatever it is, 270, most of them are bolt action. Most of them only hold 5 rounds. I don't think I know of a rifle that holds 5 rounds. So what are they trying to do? obviously the people who wrote this stuff don't know anything about firearms. You're right, have never used one. Certainly, it's almost like if you're going to write firearm legislation, you really got to go spend a day on the range and actually put your hands on a rifle and use it and see how they work and what they can and cannot do, and just
Who, Nick?
wow.
I say again, Nick. Okay, I say again. What responsible, experienced firearm owner, whether they're a farmer or a hunter or a sports shooter, actually sits around and talks about their rifle or shotgun that's capable of discharging center fire ammunition in a semi-automatic fashion? I mean,
Do they know what semi-automatic means?
I'm scratching my head, and I know, maybe I should know this, and I'm sure there's a reason for this, but I have to tell you that I am kind of scratching my head and going, hang on just a second. What exactly does it mean that it's capable of discharging a center fire piece of ammunition? I'm not
I know what it
entirely.
means.
I'm not. I know there's a meaning to it. There has to be a meaning to it. They have to have looked it up somewhere. I'm just saying that I'm not really entirely sure what that's supposed to mean. I mean, I'm trying to picture. Oh, wait a minute. I
think of the
suppose
butt
if
of a
I have a
shell.
double barrel, I suppose if I'm firing a double
No,
barreled shotgun, it's not necessarily center fired.
no. Yes, it does. The center fire part is in the base of the shell, the flat spot. There's a little tiny round piece. It's called the primer. And when the firing pin hits that, sets off a little spark, and that ignites the gunpowder, and that propels the slug down the barrel.
Right.
That's what they call a center fire. A 22 caliber weapon is one where the hammer hits the firing pin hits the edge of the round, the part
Okay.
that doesn't fit
Okay.
in, and that sets it off. So there's no
Okay.
little
So
bullseye in
I
the middle.
guess, and I'm just conscious of time here. I know we have to go for a break
Right.
in about a minute. But I guess, Nick, what I'm glad you've clarified that for me. But I'm not sure that I see the difference in terms of saving people's lives, okay,
No,
and
there is none.
safety of the difference in the type of cartridges that are being used and how they're actually activated, where the firing pin actually strikes the cartridge.
Well, pistols
I
work
mean,
on
I
the same
look, call
principle.
me a redneck science denying,
Redneck, huh?
knuckle dragging Neanderthal. I just don't get it.
Well, first of all, pistols use the same kind of principle. Pistol ammunition is center fire as well.
Okay, but what does this have to do with safety?
Nothing. None of this. That's the whole point of my big diatribe. Was once you get to the meat of it, it doesn't do a thing to make anybody any safer. It just criminalizes a whole new group of people.
I I don't get it.
Well, there you
I
go.
don't get it, and unfortunately, there are too many people out there who also don't get it, but they have absolute faith in the government to get it for them. And I just don't. When I see this kind of thing, I'm going, whoever wrote this doesn't get it either. It's just
Well, they get
screams
paid a
out
lot of
to
money
me.
not to get it.
Yeah. Anyway,
All
look,
right.
we got to go for a break, right? So
Yep, we
we'll be
do.
back in a few minutes here on the Nick and Joe Show